guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How you doing tonight, Psycho?
I am super tired, but I've got caffeine, so I am ready to record here.
As you hear it pop in the background.
Yes, there you go.
All right. Well, guys, this week, as we are prepping into Backlash from WWE, we wanted to go over a few things. But before we talk about WWE and everything that goes on with Backlash, we want to talk a little bit about AEW. And specifically, what about AEW? Now that AEW's been with us for about 5 years, I think it's time to go over a bit of the roster and decide, to be honest, who's been helping the company, who's been harming the company, and who's in the company. But before we do that, we need to do as we always do. As we always do. We need to go.
That's
an inside joke.
That's for you.
That's for you, Carrie. I know you listen. Now we go right into the world news of wrestling. So, the weekly world news of wrestling, if you will. So, Psycho, kick us off. What's going on in the world of wrestling?
So, finally a big re-signing of a contract. Drew McIntyre has officially re-signed with the WWE. So,
for a huge contract.
Yeah. The Rock announced it on X, or maybe it was Instagram. I forget which one, but he announced it and then like gave Drew like a sword, right?
A claymore, specifically.
Yeah,
a claymore is a 6-foot long sword that is big in Scotland. If you've ever seen the Braveheart, it's the sword that William Wallace uses.
Okay. So yeah, but I didn't really feel like Drew was going anywhere. I didn't get that sense. We had talked about how he's probably resigning. They're not letting him go. And I'm excited for it. I think he's done some of his best work that he's done ever. Within the last definitely in the last few months, or 6 months or to a year. And I'm loving the stuff that he's doing with CM Punk, because I think they're both injured right now, so they're both not cleared, and so they're both kind of moving the story along with promos and everything. And
they
I'm
had
excited.
A really good promo on they had a really good promo on Monday. If you haven't watched it yet,
I saw part of it. I don't think I saw all of it. I saw a clip, but I don't think it was the full clip. So I'm gonna have to go hunt it down, because it was great from what I saw.
It's a couple of different parts. It deals with draft stuff. So on Monday, CM Punk was drafted in the second round of the Monday's draft, and then Punk was drafted.
Round.
Yep. But Punk wasn't drafted, or McIntyre wasn't drafted till the fourth round of it, and he comes out all pissed off about how he's been out there doing this and what has Punk done and da. And he even hollers at Booker T, who's right there, and told looking at Booker T, he's like, "Look, man, I know you were there. I remember what you said and how you felt about him then." Like, he totally calls him out on it. And then while Drew's going through this whole rant about it and how he got hurt, and he got hurt actually on the European tour, but he's claiming he got hurt at WrestleMania from Punk's attack. And while that's going on, and he hollers at Punk saying, "Hey, I might be hurt, but I'm still here. I come to work every day. I'm not home, uh, complaining and moaning on my couch." And Punk is shown, like they put spotlight on this show, and he gets on the mic up in the skybox and calls him out. And so McIntyre goes running up towards the skybox around the back end, looking to get up to him to go find him and stuff like this. And so that goes on. I think they do like another round or two of the draft and have some other stuff. And Drew finally finds the skybox, and in the skybox, Punk's not there, but there's a signed autograph picture of Punk to Drew and stuff like that. And then Drew, or the Punk's music hits, and he comes down to the ring. And so Drew's watching from the skybox, and Punk turns his back to the camera and is looking up at the skybox and cuts a promo to McIntyre about the whole thing and does a really good promo. And my favorite part of this is Punk's like, usually I go long-winded on these things, but I think I'm going to try and beat your last title reign and try to keep my promo under that. And he looks at Pat McAfee and goes, "Pat, time me." And he does his promo, and he cuts his promo in like 3 minutes out of the 5 minutes and whatever it was that McIntyre was champion at WrestleMania. It was super good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I didn't see that part. Yeah, I only saw the first part where Punk was up in the skybox. So yeah, I'll have to go back and watch all that. Sounds awesome.
It was very good.
And I'm looking forward to it when they're both cleared and they can have a match and stuff. But they're more than capable until that point of keeping things moving with their promos. So in their spots. So, but super happy that Drew's resigned. And then Kenny Omega has returned to AEW. And I don't know if you saw his appearance on Dynamite as we're taping this.
Not yet.
Well,
I need to go back. I need to go back and watch this.
Yeah, so Kenny Omega has returned to AEW, and basically, was basically calling out the Elite, saying that they're not the only EVPs. There's that he's going to have a say while Tony Khan is recuperating or while he's not there or whatnot. Jack Perry ends up attacking Omega, and then all of the Elite and the Bucks, do a beatdown basically on them, and then FTR tried to make the save, and they attacked FTR as well and tipped over their stretcher or whatnot. So, yeah. So I think that all of this stuff is very interesting, and I actually applaud them for trying something different. That's not. They usually don't shoot a lot of angles. It's usually here's dream matches and here's this. We've talked a little bit about their stories and whatnot, and anytime they attempt to do a story like this, a big thing, it can only help. I feel. And so even if the story doesn't end up being as good or if it has flaws, I think at least they're trying here. So I'm all for it.
You're all Elite?
I didn't say that. I said I'm all for it. Yeah. What do you feel about the angle?
I read up a little bit about this. I haven't watched it yet. I'm intrigued, and I'm also intrigued because it feels like they're going to build to some kind of 8-man. So it questions who's going to be the 8th man, right? Because you have Kenny and FTR. Who would be your 8th man? And I mean, your first instinct of what's been going on is maybe having it be Pac to call back against the Okada match. Or at least my first instinct might be that. But there are other options as well to go through. I'm just not sure whom. Maybe MJF if he's healthy.
That one I could see. But although that wouldn't make sense for him to come back to do something with the Elite when he still has that unfinished business with Adam Cole and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it would get a reaction and it would be awesome. I just don't know if that's the spot for him to return in. I'd have to say it won't be Punk, even though that would make sense with the fairy stuff. I'm trying to think of who else. Won't be Cody. I'm trying to think of somebody that they could.
Well, that's the thing is, what stars do they have to do that with, right? You can't do Strickland, who's their top babyface right now, because he's the champion.
Right.
You can't do the cowboy, Adam Page,
Adam Page,
because he's injured. Who? I mean, I can't even think that you can even do like Cassidy, because Cassidy's in a storyline right now with Trent Beretta.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Copeland, maybe. Like,
I think he's still in the storyline too. I think they're building to a storyline with him and Malachi Black.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess it depends on how long they drag this out, though. You know, so because they could easily transition one of those guys into that feud.
I mean, it's true, but I feel like this feud would need a returning star to do it, and it needs to be a star. It needs to be that powerful fourth, because you're going to have you're having essentially Kenny Omega bringing in his Avengers to do it, and you need to have that big name to come out of nowhere for it.
The problem is that there's the star power. Like, most of the people that would make a splash like that are either it doesn't make sense or they're working for the other company. You know, so it's
true.
Yeah, I'm stumped on who it could be. I mean, I'm sure they'll fit somebody in. It'll probably, honestly, in all likelihood, it'll be a disappointment. That's how I feel. Is that it'll be somebody that it's like,
My worry is it's going to be a disappointment. It'll be like Tony Khan himself.
Oh my God! Don't say that. Oh my gosh! Like, we do not.
Or his dad. What's his dad name? Sheev Khan.
Sahid Khan, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's the one that's not Nick. It's the Khan that's not Nick.
No relation.
No relation. But a funny joke nonetheless.
Yeah.
Nick Khan would be more believable than Tony Khan being in there.
All right. Do we have any other news?
The only other thing I want to touch on it, it's AEW related as well. Did you happen to see Tony Khan's interview during the NFL draft, where they were interviewing him in his neck brace, of course, and they're talking about, you know, the angle that they did on Dynamite where he got attacked, and Tony Khan, you know, basically says, well, you know, we're competing against, you know, the WWE. WWE is our competitor, and so we're, you know, the WWE is, you know, an evil, you know, they're an evil company, and AEW is the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and WWE is like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling.
Oh wow!
You haven't heard about this? Oh yeah, and the NFL, the you know, the sports commentators or whatever that were doing the show, they're just instantly like uncomfortable with it, and they just shut it down. Basically, it's like, so, you know, they moved right into the other topic. They didn't even like want to touch that. But like, here's the thing. I get it that they're competing, but Vince is out. Like, and I know that there might still be some people there that they need to weed out or whatever. However, like, trying to paint it as WWE is evil as a whole and just kind of in general I don't think I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to have that will have a problem with that. Even people working in AEW, that
Yep.
have friends over there or used to work there and don't hold the animosity that some people have. And then you've got all the people over at WWE that probably are like, are you kidding me? I just think, I don't know, it's one thing to be competitive with the other company, but to kind of put a broad stroke and say it's an evil company and they're the Harvey Weinstein, it's like maybe you could tie that to Vince, allegedly, or whatever, but like Triple H, and Nick Khan and The Rock, they've done a really good job over there. And so I don't think it does AEW any favors.
Yeah, I agree. And like the only thing I can think of is the rule in promoing, right? When you cut a promo against somebody, you never put down the other person per se, right? As an example, like if I was working someone, I wouldn't talk about like, oh, who's this guy? I don't even know you. Where'd you come from? You're some bum off the street. Because, if they beat me, I lost to a bum. If I beat them, I only just beat a bum, right? Subsequently, in the same vein of this, you shouldn't talk about your competition poorly like that. Oh, they're WWE. They're like the cream of the crop. They're the top. They're who we're
Right.
trying to be better than, so that when we beat them, we beat the top. We didn't just put down the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling.
Yeah, I would have worded it, I mean, if he wants to do like, they're Goliath and we're the underdogs, and we're going, it's we're already closing that gap, over anybody else in the last 20 years or whatnot. If he wants to like paint it like that, I think that would get more people behind in AEW as an underdog story. And that's honestly what he should play. And at the same vein, like mentioning to the sports writers, it's like, we're different, we're an alternative. And for those that WWE isn't their thing, we're there for them, and if they did that, I think a lot of mainstream casual fans that would see that don't know, that just kind of casually follow wrestling would be like, they might get some new fans off of that, of
Well,
checking them out at least.
it's the concept of the charisma, right? Like being able to talk and to get somebody to want to do a thing that you want them to do. That's not Tony's forte. I've yet to see what that is his forte, but it's not his forte. Like, he is not a talker. He should never be on a mic. He should not be cutting promos of any variety because he doesn't understand it. That's the thing in wrestling that people just never see, man, is the moves are such a small aspect of being a wrestler. Just because you can do a 630 senton doesn't make you a wrestler, man. That makes you a guy that can do a move. You need to be a guy who can go out there and tell a story and interact with the fans, get the emotional reaction of the fans, cut a promo that could do a similar thing. And in addition to that, be also the guy who is at the merch table selling their merch to fans because and trying to spend time with the fans because that's who pays your like way, right? You have these guys, and I still see it all the time, who are shit to fans because they think that they need to keep kayfabe and be a heel. Man, that's not it. The fans recognize good and bad. You can still be a dick without being a dick, right? I sell more merch at Devotion on the regular than probably 90% of the company, and I'm a heel at Devotion. And it's because fans come to see me. They come to see my character. They come to see me get my ass kicked. I sell tiny little hands for the fans to buy to piss me off in the ring, it is a great selling thing because it's something for them to interact with me and a way to have a souvenir that's not that expensive, right? Tony doesn't understand any of this because he's not a worker. He's never been. He doesn't understand any of the concept of getting the emotional reward, the emotional desire from somebody, right? He's just felt that emotion without realizing what's going on. So he doesn't understand any of it. You see it in the way he writes his stories. And it makes me think that there must be somebody helping him with the stories lately. Because the stuff that's starting to become good, like the stuff with Story Strickland and Joe and Paige and everything, was a really good story for them. And it makes me think that someone must be helping because Tony doesn't do that.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he has help. I'm sure of it. There's enough guys there that he should be getting help, right? He should be getting help from the veterans that have been places and can help in that regard. People that have drawn money.
And this might go into what we talk about later when we go to talk to Tony. I'll talk about Tony because I'm sure he's on the list. But the thing that Tony Khan needs to do, and we've talked about it before about getting bookings, like bookers and stuff like that, is he needs essentially an authority figure. Who was the president in the 90s for WWE whose name escapes me?
Jack Tunney.
Yes. He needs a Tunney, right? He needs a figurehead for shows to be like, oh, this person's actually running it. Or an Eric Bischoff, even. Saying that this person's actually the head of everything. That way you have a focal point, but someone that can do the mic work and can get the reactions and things like that. Dixie Carter was a great example of that in TNA for being able to get reaction. She wasn't the best by any means, but she was a good example of somebody that you can look at and see that. They could totally do that with somebody there.
Well, and they have enough, when they were carting out guys like Jake the Snake Roberts, Tully Blanchard, heck, even like they've got Ric Flair, they've got
Arn
all
Anderson.
these people. Yeah, Arn Anderson. That's who I was. They've got all these people that would make a great, on-screen authority figure that can cut promos and move things along and whatnot. It's like honestly, that would be probably like the best use of somebody like a Ric Flair. And they've got him signed past all of the Sting stuff. Why not put him on TV in that role? Because he could do it well.
Yeah, so, I could totally see something like that from him as long as he doesn't get in the ring.
Exactly, as long as he does not.
Another great example. Yeah, another great example of one right now is in TNA is Santino Marella, right? He is fantastic on the mic as an authority figure. But Santino in general is just super smart with the business and understanding how to get emotion from people. It makes it perfect. But having somebody do that, and you can even have somebody like QT Marshall, right? I know QT's not doing TV stuff anymore, but like have QT be the authority figure or something like that. You could totally do something like that, or have Tony stay off of TV and have the Bucks be the authority figures, or Kenny even while he's still healing.
Like I think I would prefer it to be somebody that's not an active wrestler, somebody that they're not going to get involved in a match, but they have enough credibility and respect that they can be stern in their bookings. I'd like somebody like a Ric Flair or an Arn Anderson, because, or even a Jake the Snake Roberts or something like that, because they can play both sides. They don't have to be a heel or a baby face on-screen character, which hasn't usually that's one or the other lately, right? It's either a baby face, they lean towards the baby face side, or it's a heel commissioner or something. I think it would be a breath of fresh air to have somebody be pretty much down the middle, that can go either direction. And I think those three specifically could do that.
I agree. But a great example too of that kind of concept, and someone that can also go down the middle. If you've been watching the weeklies for SmackDown and Raw, Adam Pearce.
I haven't.
I know, but Adam Pearce as well as oh my gosh, Nick Aldis, they're both in that same vein. They'll be stern. They will be heelish if they need to, or heelish sounding, not really heelish, but they're also face stuff. Like there was a great spot on Monday night where during the draft, Chelsea Green, who has been playing this Karen-like character, is now sent to SmackDown, and Adam Pearce during the draft, it was asked, he's like, "Well, what's been the best draft pick so far?" And Pearce is like, "Oh, the best draft pick, hands down, was Chelsea Green. Was not even mine. It was Chelsea Green, the SmackDown. Nick Aldis, thank you so much for taking that off my hands." Like, it's like I'm leaning onto that heelish end, but it was so funny you want to laugh, and
Right.
they're doing such a good job with that. And if AEW had something in that, I would like to see, and this might actually be a great way to do this, is we're coming up to the end of Bryan Danielson's wrestling career.
His full-time wrestling
career. But that's what I'm saying, is like he can do this where he could be the authority figure, and then maybe on these really big things he might have to do a thing. But right. Bryan could easily be doing this and has the respect from everybody, save Nigel McGuinness, to do this with.
Yeah, agreed. Tony has options, right? So yes. I just would hope that he would utilize some of them.
All right.
Yes.
One last bit of news before I forget, because I will forget if I haven't. We kind of talked about this a couple of times the last few weeks, but I wanted to give the last of this. As of Monday, I think is when the sale finalized. Vincent Kennedy McMahon now owns no shares or anything of the WWE or TKO of any variety. He has sold all of his shares off completely. They're all gone. So we are now living in a time when Vincent Kennedy McMahon Jr. has nothing to do with the WWE or making money off the WWE.
Yeah, he's completely gone, severed all ties. It's weird because 2 years ago, like, I couldn't have even pictured. I did not think that. I didn't know if we were going to live to see the day that Vince McMahon, was no longer part of WWE, and how it came to be. I don't think we would have predicted.
Right. I don't think that I didn't think we'd ever see Vincent Kennedy McMahon live to the day where we didn't see Vincent Kennedy McMahon in the WWE.
Right. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, like, eventually he'll have to pass it on to somebody or sell it or whatever. But, like, he's going to run it until he dies, and so I just didn't think that was going to come anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. How quickly that all changed.
It's so crazy.
And in the way that it did is, honestly, there needs to be a movie made on the whole thing. Like all of, it's quite interesting.
I'm sure we'll see it at some point. It won't be for a few years, but probably once all of this, the court stuff goes out and is done. So, that being said, let's go ahead now and move on to our episode full. So, AEW, who's helped it, who's hurt it, and who's in it.
How do you spell aha? Like
No cues.
okay.
So what we're gonna do now is Psycho's gonna go through a list of names he's got, and we're gonna talk about them and decide which category they fall into.
So here's the first one, because this is actually what inspired me to do this topic.
Okay.
Cody Rhodes. He's no longer there. However, he did a promo, basically how he could never root against it. Right, and could never root against AEW because, he says if, there would be no AEW if not for him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a dispute online about there would have been an AEW, it just would have been different or whatever, or it wouldn't have. And they're looking at it all from a wrestler standpoint. It's like he wasn't, that's not why I watched AEW, but from a business standpoint, from the behind the scenes, Cody's right. There would have been no AEW if Cody didn't get that ball rolling. Did he do it alone? No. However, it all really started with Dave Meltzer basically had said, no wrestling promotion outside of the WWE can draw, 10,000 people. And Cody basically responded and said, I'll take that challenge. And he got together with the Young Bucks and everybody, and they teamed with Ring of Honor, and they put together a show that drew over 10,000 people. And that's where the first rumblings was like, oh, can they do it again? And then they got matched up with Tony Khan, and from there, it's kind of all history. I think Cody, it's interesting to me because Cody, I feel like, was a huge part of their initial success because he kind of led that charge with especially when it was really an AEW versus WWE feud, and it was something fresh and unique when they had everybody behind them, it seemed like, as an alternative. And I will say, though, that I think he could technically be on the other side, too, of hurting it. Not because of anything he did while he was there, but for leaving. Because with Cody gone, he didn't... there wasn't that structure that there was, or that professionalism that Cody brought to the table. And I do not feel like they've been quite the same. It didn't happen immediately, but there were signs there and crumblings that things definitely changed when Cody left. But what are your thoughts on Cody on either side of those fences?
I actually agree with you. I would definitely think that without Cody Rhodes leading the charge in pretty much the whole aspect, there wouldn't be an AEW as we know it now. There might have been a promotion that Tony Khan bought. There might have been promotion that the Bucks and Omega ended up helping with in the back and getting stuff going. But unless you knew who the Bucks and Kenny Omega were, you wouldn't have cared. Cody Rhodes was still fairly fresh off of leaving the WWE when all that started. He was dealing with all this, like, he would have been Stardust when he left, but he was still fresh from all that. And he'd been in the WWE for a long time going into that. He was a known commodity. Plus, he'd started having stuff in New Japan and on the indies that people could see and recognize as it was going along. He was building up steam on the indies. He was becoming an indie darling after becoming a WWE product, which is usually the reverse. And building that steam got people to want to see what he did next. He was the lightning rod of the news, really, because you could have had Dave Meltzer or others be like, "Oh, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are starting a promotion or trying to do a show in Madison Square Garden," and I don't think that they would have drawn 10. They might have. They probably would have drawn 2, maybe 5, with the ROH fans, but the lightning rod of Cody Rhodes, indie darling, former WWE superstar,
and somebody that had the Rhodes legacy behind them.
Yeah, it had the
He
name.
had the he had the name value, not just his name value, but his family, his dad, his brother,
and you can see it even to now. Cody has the same ability that Dusty had about networking, that makes a lot of things happen that shouldn't happen. Cody also has such an eye for selling himself, which again is what Dusty had. I don't think you get to All In without Dusty, or without without Dusty, but without Cody. I don't think you get to AEW without him, or Double or Nothing. That doesn't happen without Cody. And the continuing for the 2 years Cody was there, towards the tail end, when people started feeling like Cody needed to go away for a while because he was getting booed along with cheered, Cody was the top face in AEW. He was the driving factor for AEW. I would be surprised to find out, or wouldn't be surprised to find out, he was the top merch seller for 2 years at AEW and not being their champion. And also doing all of this and not putting a title on yourself, like the big belt on yourself, instead using your prestige to build a new title like that. Because the main event title, whatever it is, in this case the AEW Championship, that's going to have prestige just naturally. But building a mid-card title, but using your biggest face in the company to do so, adds so much prestige to it, right? And you don't have to win it, at a house show in Rio de Janeiro. You can make something huge in front of the TV with your biggest name, and then having, if you don't mind me saying, a Sheamus quote, a banger after banger after banger with people like MJF and Dustin, which those two had a great match, and so many other matches that were just so good that he had building into that. And yeah, you don't have AEW on its level, because you also, with Cody, you got, like you mentioned before, the professionalism. You get what every other wrestler there needs to aspire to, and that's a star. Cody is and was and is a star, and that was something that the AEW needed at the time and is lacking now, is a star. So yeah, he's definitely in the helped category.
Yeah. Another name, let's toss out. Let's stay with the Elite for a second. I'm gonna throw out the Young Bucks. Now obviously I also agree that AEW does not happen without the Young Bucks. And they kind of got steam. They've been indie darlings for a while, and they went, over to New Japan with the Bullet Club, same with Cody and all that. But they did all this, and they were selling like a top merch seller, like through Pro Wrestling Tees and Hot Topic and all. They were selling like their shirts and everything. So they had the kind of. So Cody had the star power, right? But the Young Bucks brought that underground movement of and really the marketability, I guess, or the merchandise. They kind of brought that aspect to it. And they were the cool new thing, right? And so I feel like the Young Bucks helped, but I also feel like they kind of hindered things too by like, and I'll just say it, by running off top talent, or kind of not acting as professional as a Cody Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wouldn't have been an AEW in its current form without the Bucks. So they needed to be there. But I also just don't know if they're what's best for AEW on the same token as well. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on the Bucks. What are your feelings there?
I can see that. I agree at the beginning as well. Like, I don't think we get to AEW without the Bucks. Because again, they are the indie stars. You had an interesting aspect when you got the 4 initial ones to get AEW going with Cody and Kenny and the Bucks. You had ostensibly the best tag team in the world. You had a former WWE star who's on the rise on the indie scene and who is a superstar. And then you have what was considered arguably the best wrestler on the indies, period, of anywhere in the world. And could, like, people saw that could easily be a star in WWE, but just wasn't, in Kenny Omega. You had the aspect of everything that you would want to see in a wrestling promotion.
It was pretty much the perfect storm, right? It was all of those guys coming together. Like, I think they all had their parts.
Agreed. And again, it's marketability. They all 4 know how to market themselves very well. And they brought together that concept about marketing with AEW, which again was such a huge tout. I mean, when AEW was building 2 Double or Nothing, the first one, right? There wasn't a week gone by where people were like, "Oh, look who's all elite now," right? Or look who's backstage, or like when they were doing that press conference and they announced Billy Gunn was going to be a producer and stuff like that. How big of a thing that was. That's all due to the marketing that these 4 knew how to do, just naturally knew how to do. And I agree with the Bucks. Like, the Bucks established the tag team scene in AEW. Without them, you don't get a tag team scene, honestly, and everything else. But I also agree. I think that they also are a hindrance because it often feels like, though they're there as VPs, they also put themselves over a lot when they don't need to. They put themselves in storylines that could easily go to somebody else to build somebody else up, but they put themselves up in there because it's a cool spot, right? Like, all the stuff with FTR right now, that could have easily gone to, say, the Acclaim to build them up. And not specifically the part dealing with, like, Brawl Out and all that, but, like, having these 3 build great matches, or these 2 great matches, to building to a 3rd match, and now a 4th match. That could have all been the Acclaim and built the Acclaim, right? Or you could have had any other tag team on that. But instead, the Bucks have to put themselves in that spot where they could have done something differently. That was one thing I liked about Cody in AEW, is Cody didn't feel like he needed to be in a main storyline spot. He was there to help build up other people, right? He helped build with building MJF story. But who did the Bucks build? If you're there, and especially if you're there in a company at a higher level, you need to start thinking about what's best for the business and not best for yourself. And that's where I think the Bucks fall short of the same level of help that Cody has or had. Is they don't help ostensibly anybody but themselves. I've yet to think, I like to see something that they've done that helps build and creates a star, but Cody did.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at the Bucks, where they were the tag team champions, and they were involved in Sting's retirement, and Sting's last match was with the Bucks, right? And then, which really, if you think about it, makes no sense from a send off to Sting. Now don't get me wrong, and we'll get to that, but like they did a good job with the farewell for Sting for the most part, but they dropped the tag titles, so the titles have to be vacated because Sting's retiring to Sting and Darby. And then rather than use that as an opportunity for them to get to a finals of a tournament and then put somebody new over, right? They ended up right back with the belts, in the top story in the company. And it's like, you had a chance. They need more stars. The Bucks had a chance to build new stars instead of keeping everybody else below them. That's my thoughts right now on the Bucks.
Yeah, I agree. So at the beginning, definitely helped, but last several years and currently right now, they're harming the company more than anything else.
I guess we should touch on Kenny Omega, last of the Elite there, and the EVPs. Kenny Omega, obviously, again, like, now with Kenny, I don't feel they needed Kenny for AEW to have existed. Right? He was now he was a big get at the time because he was the hottest free agent, out there. And so by him coming over and arguably, so many people thinking he was the the top wrestler in the world, the best wrestler in the world, by having him, it lent that credibility of, okay, there's going to be, there is an excitement or a buzz about there being great wrestling on the show.
This is where the big boys play.
Sure. We're not here to play. Look at the adjective. Oh, as Kevin Nash would say. Which it's not an adjective, but so with Kenny Omega, though, he definitely helped. And I actually think Kenny, for the most part, has been a help to them. Because yes, he was involved in the whole brawl out thing with the Bucks and Punk and all that. But everything I've heard, he was the most level-headed. He even cut a promo recently, talking about, that him and Punk are, he feels they're on good terms and whatnot. And so, but he also helped a lot with the video game and everything. It was basically his baby, to create the video game. And whether or not, you look at the video game as a success or not, or I haven't played it, so I can only go off of what I've heard. However, that's still getting their name out there, in the video game market and everything, which is huge. And I also feel like he had a lot to do with like action figures and things like that. So I think from that standpoint, I think Kenny Omega is really probably one of the smarter ones that are there. And I do feel he helped. I can't put him in the Hurt because I don't think I put him in the same category as the Bucks. I feel like he's guilty by association, honestly. But I do feel like he has helped a lot backstage and with other aspects.
I agree a lot, actually. And I am actually putting him straight in the help category. And in the front of it and in the face of it, I agree. I think they could have gone without having to have a Kenny Omega. I mean, you could have had Jordan Grace essentially in his spot as a great wrestler there who had name value and everything else, and been considered one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and it might have been the same aspect.
Mhm.
But when you start peeling back the layers of what wrestling is and things that I've heard from people on the inside, Kenny Omega's biggest thing outside of the video game, of course, is he's been in charge of the women's division for a majority of AEW. Most of the women's division's decisions and who to bring in and things like that have gone through Kenny. So what AEW has as a women's division is nearly solely due to Kenny Omega and his eye for talent and everything else. And he's kind of been the person to go to for a lot of the women there. And things I've heard there, that's one of the best things about AEW is the way that the women specifically are treated. Not maybe out in the ring per se, like how much time they get and storylines, but in the back. And a lot of that goes to Kenny.
Yeah. Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about Kenny because I think he, from all accounts, he's a good guy. And so he's level-headed and gets along with most people too. So,
yeah.
So let's talk about. Let's throw out. Let's do Chris Jericho. Here's an interesting one. I feel like he actually tremendously helped AEW in the beginning because he was honestly more so than Cody at the time. Jericho was the biggest star that they had for a little bit, for when they first started, and to have him sign on and then be their first champion was huge as far as mainstream viewers, and to be getting that television show and having Jericho on it, because I feel like even more people knew Jericho than Cody, and so having him sign, yes, could they have had an AEW, but it would have been a bunch of indie guys and Cody. By having Jericho there, it was like, oh, this is something to take notice. And for the first little bit, Jericho was, he was still like cool and over, and people were singing his song, and like Jericho was a huge part of that buzz in the beginning, and adding that credibility. Now later on, like as of now, I feel like he's kind of overexposed himself, and he's maybe staying on past his expiration date, or needs to be freshened up again. Something, reinvent himself, because this actually is the longest he's like stayed in a kind of in the same form in a while, because he's always constantly, he's really good about reinventing himself, but right now to me he feels stale. Like, people want him to, he's getting go away heat, and so I think he's hurting now. He's hurting the product by taking up so much space and not putting people over. But in the beginning, absolutely, he was a tremendous help. He just needed to know kind of when to take a step back and to take breaks, so he can come back and let the people miss him.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is for Jericho, and I agree with you. Like, he had a lot more name recognition to him when he came in than even Cody did, and so it definitely did help. Every great promotion of any variety needs to have a great heel superstar and a great face superstar. With Cody, they had the great face superstar, and with Jericho, they had a great heel superstar. And even though they really didn't involve each other with much, they had that. And there was always that conversation of, are these two ever going to go against each other, right? And at the beginning, Jericho was helping with making stars. The first, one of the first matches, it was, I think the first All Out. I could be wrong, but I think it was the first All Out. was Jericho and Orange Cassidy in some form of Falls Count Anywhere match, right?
Yeah, I
And
forget the exact stipulation, but yeah.
something to the effect of, I think, like, one of them had to get knocked into like a giant pool of orange juice or something like that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
So, but that match and that storyline building with Jericho made Orange Cassidy. Before, he was a joke. Like you and I had talked about many times going into that I didn't like Orange Cassidy. I thought he was just a random indie guy who had a stupid gimmick. And now I love Cassidy. I think he's a great worker and a great character for what he does, because he's become such a smart worker with everything. And that all started with the match and storyline with Jericho. And continuing on, like from there, like there's so many matches. The stuff with him and Sammy Guevara, on and off matches stuff that they've had and working with him made Sammy Guevara. You had even Jack Swagger became relevant again.
Yeah.
Jake Hager, sorry, became relevant again. But then you started getting diminishing returns because Jericho was staying around too long. Where you had a match last year with Andrade, Antonio Andretti, or something like that. He's tagged now with Top Flight a lot.
Yeah.
And but he came in as ostensibly a cannon fodder guy who was supposed to have a dark match against Jericho and beat Jericho. And that was his big thing, which made him hot for like 3 months, and then he's died off. But that was like really the last person that Jericho helped, and really didn't help much because Jericho doesn't have that equity that he had before, because he has been staying around too long. He did put a lot of equity and stuff and prestige on the AEW title because he's Jericho. But now that he's the FTW champion, I can give a damn about that belt and or anything to do with Jericho. Right?
Yeah.
It's he needs to go away. So I agree. He was a tremendous help at the beginning, and it definitely feels like he's a hindrance to not only AEW but his legacy right now. So
Yeah, agreed. It was weird because for a while there we were kind of saying Jericho's like he'd have like people were saying, oh, he's the GOAT as far as reinventing himself and all of that, and it was like there was an argument to be made there. And now because he stayed around so long, it is hurting his legacy and his career.
yeah.
Where now people aren't viewing him the same way.
Yep.
Yeah. John Moxley. I feel like he was really the first big free agent signing to make a splash in AEW.
Yep.
And so I feel like, especially in the beginning, he was a big get, and he actually was very over in the beginning. He's still over to an extent. But he was really over in the beginning because it was like that first big defection, and so when he debuted, it was like oh my gosh, it's another war type thing of, he made it like he was the one that really made it cool to jump over, because yes, Jericho was there, but he started with them, and so it was he hadn't been with WWE for a bit. Was doing Japan and stuff like that. But when Moxley came over, that was like oh my gosh, it's like people would rather, go to AEW. That made it cool to jump over there, and he had a lot to do with that, and he was another mainstream star. Because he was fresh off of being on WWE television.
Yeah. It kind of felt like not as quick, but it had a very similar feel to Luger on Nitro.
Yeah.
And the big one too with that was because of the show. So they had the All In show, which was the first big show that
Yeah.
they had at Madison Square Garden. Well, their first big AEW show, the first one that they ever had, was Double or Nothing. That's where Moxley came. Was the first big show at the end. That was the big surprise
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah, and it was big. 100%. Like now I don't my feelings on Moxley, like he relies too much on the garbage style wrestling now. Which it used to be like something he could pull out as a good brawler, but now it's like if you're watching a Moxley match, it's like, okay, we know he's gonna bleed. You know, it's like you can put your money like if you're doing DraftKings and like doing bets on AEW, it's like if it says, who's gonna, is there gonna be blood in Moxley's match? Say yes, you're gonna win some money. But um but at the same time, like I don't feel he's a hindrance in the same way as like a Jericho. Because I do feel like he still can go in the ring and um he can still put on good matches. He doesn't have the star power he once did. Because he for a while there when he first debuted, he could have been, and he was their most reliable guy. Like he was like, how many times did he like cancel a vacation, and come in and save them, when they needed somebody for a main event spot?
When Punk got hurt with his ankle injury, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. He was on vacation and he was going to be out for like a month, and they
Yeah.
called him back like a week later.
Mm-hmm. It's like, we need
And he
you.
came.
He came back and won the belt. And he was having a reign when he was going to be on vacation, and it seemed like he was their guy that they would go to all the time to fill those types of spots when somebody would get injured or something like that. And so from that standpoint, he was tremendously helpful. Right now, I don't think he's a hindrance. I just think he's a style that I don't always enjoy. Because it seems very repetitive. But he might be in the category, or however you put it. The yeah, hey, he might be in that category now. But because of how much he's such a big part of AEW's legacy and their beginnings, that I feel like he gets a little bit of the benefit of the doubt for me.
I agree for the most part. I don't know if I keep him in the thing. I still think I put him in the help because even to the day, like you could put Moxley in a storyline with somebody and make a star easily because you can heat up Moxley at any point, and you can't do that with somebody like say Jericho right now, right? Or Big Bill or anybody else. You can't just make a star out of working a storyline with any of them, but you can with Moxley. Moxley has still that star power that he can bust out when he needs to. And yeah, maybe it's not there for that, but great example, like, right? I'm not a biggest fan of Eddie Kingston, as we've mentioned many times. But the storyline that him and Moxley had about being former friends and building the fighting and him taking or him winning the Continental Classic against Moxley after finally being able to beat him, that made Eddie Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
And it was against Moxley because Moxley had the equity, had that star power that he could do that with. Are they always having great stories for him? No. But I would say, honestly, Moxley is probably their Austin for AEW. And I'm not saying on like the sales level or the over level per se, but with the reliability, the easy ability of putting him into a main event or having him have a storyline with somebody to make a star, and and the attitude that he has, where he could do heelish things but be a face over it. There are a lot of parallels with him and Austin.
I've got a better analogy or somebody to compare him to, especially if you're going in that realm. I'd say he's more like the Bret Hart of AEW, in the fact that, and I don't say that lightly, just based off of what you're saying, because Bret, as far as reliability, because Bret, never missed a show, was always Mr. Reliable for years for the WWF back in the day. And he was somebody that you could heat up to the main events at any time. And when he put somebody over, they did become a star. Steve Austin being one of them.
Yeah,
was a big one. Owen, Sean, so many people he put over and elevated. And he was Mr. Reliability and somebody they could call upon. Whereas Austin, Austin wasn't necessarily that guy, I don't believe, because he took his ball and went home, enough times that, and he would get injured or things like that. And Bret really never did up until, he worked through so much as far as injuries went and was on television that he really was Mr. Reliable. If he didn't have the nickname of the best there was, the best there is, the best there ever will be, you could have easily had him be Mr. Reliable. You had Mr. Perfect, for Kurt Hennig. Bret Hart could have been Mr. Reliable. There's a feud that could have happened based off of that. But, yeah.
Yes, but Bret was a heel everywhere except for in Canada whenever he wanted to be, and he could be a face. Moxley's kind of just the same. He's a tweener level like Austin was, but you just loved him either way, and you still do. And that's kind of where I'm going with the parallel of that. And yes, Austin did take his ball and go home a couple of times and didn't want to have a match with Brock Lesnar and didn't want to do this. And I don't see Moxley being that kind of guy in the same vein with Bret. Bret did also not want to drop a title to somebody in Canada, instead wanted to drop it on a Monday show instead of a pay-per-view.
Well, the situation there.
I
think we've done a whole. I think we did an episode where we talked about kind of the screw job to death. As far as that
if
goes.
We have it, every other wrestling podcast has. So,
right.
But the point being is, I think Moxley is definitely still on the help end, and I think he will be. I unlike with Jericho, I don't see Moxley ever becoming a hindrance.
Yeah, I don't know. This is probably Moxley. I think Moxley's definitely helped. How about well, we'd have to get to him eventually. Let's mention CM Punk. CM Punk. Here's somebody that still to this date was their biggest draw. The ratings show it. The attendance shows it. Nobody drew more than CM Punk while he was there. However, I'm going to take an interesting turn here that you probably won't see coming. I think as much as he drew for AEW, and as much as I feel like if he doesn't return to AEW, if he didn't return to pro wrestling with AEW, he might never have mended fences with the WWE. So I think he needed that path to get to where he is now. And now he's, we talked about it earlier with Drew. It's like he's putting on amazing. He's a big part of WWE's, what they're doing right now. While hurt, exactly. Which is a lot more like in Austin, by the way, that somebody that while he, was healing from his broken neck, could cut promos and get more over being out and not be in matches than he was with him wrestling. So he's taking full advantage of that. But I feel like all the stuff that happened with Punk there, I feel like it wasn't the right fit for him. He was never going to succeed in AEW because, like Punk very well admits, there were people there that did not want him there. And because of that, and because you didn't have a boss that would control that and make money off of that, I feel like when Punk, with all the stuff that happened with Punk and then Punk leaving, I still feel like right now they have not recovered from that. Because when Punk was there and stuff, they were the hottest, they were on the upswing. Even with the All Out in Wembley Stadium, and all of that, drawing that big crowd, they have not gotten back to that kind of success since. And their goodwill has kind of gone away. There's less and less fans that are feeling positive about AEW as there were before all the Punk stuff happened. Yeah.
So you're putting him into the hurt side or help side?
I think honestly, him being there hurt them more than helped. And because yes, he drew their biggest houses and had their biggest attendance, but they would have been in a better situation had he never come in, I feel. I don't I feel I'm happy it happened because we got when Punk first debuted there, still one of the best moments ever in pro wrestling as far as a return or a debut or anything like that. And if you go back and listen to that crowd, it's a whole different animal. And I feel like we wouldn't have got to where we are currently with WWE if that didn't happen. However, from an AEW standpoint, I would have taken the not reaching the highest of highs, but not being at the lowest of lows like they were before, recently. I think it hurt them more than helped them. And I know it's surprising to hear that from me, and I don't think that that's a knock on CM Punk. I feel like it was the wrong chemistry there. It was the wrong place, wrong time, wrong personalities clashing. It just was never going to work.
So what you're saying is they were in the wrong cult of personality.
I see what you did there. There you go.
So I am also going to take an interesting take on this.
Okay.
I think within the next 5 years, we're going to see the time that Punk was in AEW helped AEW. And I say this as in a couple of different ways. One, I think that the amount of press that everything that has gone down with Punk, though, is for the most part bad. It has generated enough publicity for AEW that they are now becoming a household name that they were not before. Additionally, I think if they can suffer through the lows that they're in right now, they will only be better. This is also the Brett spitting on them moment, right? You had a star who could not be controlled in the fashion that they were in based off the way they were, because essentially at the time Tony was, everybody a handshake and honesty, right? With everything that happened with Punk both times, you don't get that, or you didn't have that beforehand, or you don't get that after the fact, right? You had that person who broke that, and now they need to establish better rules and policies for it. You now can see the building blocks of a newer version of AEW in the background and everything else based off of things that's happened with Punk behind the scenes. But also, you get, like I said, the name recognition. I had people coming up and talking to me a couple weeks ago when they were going to drop the Wembley footage that I never talked wrestling about. They know I'm a wrestler, but we just never talk wrestling. They came up and asked me about it, in my opinion about it. And these are people who aren't like regular fans. They're casual, outside of the regular realm of wrestling fans. And they came and asked me all about it and everything else, which tells me that that whole incident was enough to bring their interest in, right? And maybe they'll gain more fans as an aspect of stuff like this in the long run. They're going to see, I think, like I said before, if they can withstand the next year or so of these lows and make it to 5 years from now, I can see this being that turning point, right? Of what created something great for AEW. So I think Punk being there, though there was a lot of issues, in the long run is going to help AEW.
Okay, very interesting. And I can see that because, like, if you notice, even the WWE, like, before the whole Punk thing happened, they never really acknowledged AEW by name in interviews. Like, they might allude to them, but they weren't mentioning them. And then with the Punk stuff, he's outright getting asked about AEW and bringing up AEW and all this. And so it is bringing more awareness to AEW, which you think, though, would translate to more ticket sales and higher attendances and things like that. It has not yet. That still, I guess, remains to be seen. I think if they can get hot with this angle that they're doing right now, there's a chance they can turn this around and there can be a buzz again. Because they do need to think outside the box and do more of these stories.
Agreed.
So I guess let's say somebody like an MJF. I feel like absolutely has helped them in every possible way. Because I feel like when Punk left, or I mean, I guess when he left the first time, or when he got sent home or whatever, when he was injured the first time, and all that happened, MJF took the ball basically, and he became the top star. He was already kind of trending up that way and being a top star, but he basically was leading the realm all the way up until All Out in Wembley. And I feel like MJF is AEW's biggest homegrown star. And I know that he had, a cup of coffee and, he came from like MLW and stuff like that. I know he competed there, but I mean, as far as like where most
national
of his
recognition,
right, national recognition on a national stage, I feel like he's their biggest success story.
Agreed. He is ostensibly their AJ Styles, right?
Yeah.
He is as he's called many times, the pillar of AEW's future. And I agree. I think he has done nothing but help the company. And in fact, you can see that as a fact because since December, since he's not been there, since he's been out on injury, there's been a downtrend for the most part of the quality of AEW. It's only been the last maybe month or so with the starting of Swerve becoming a face for Swerve Strickland that you're starting to see something getting similar levels of quality on the show that you had with MJF. But I've yet to turn into or AEW to watch what Swerve Strickland has to say and what craziness he's going to do. I regularly turned into AEW, or at least got supercut clips of AEW to see what what MJF was going to do.
Yeah,
he
was must see television for a while.
He definitely was, and he was such a big star that he was able to get a double clothesline over and a double drop kick that he called the kangaroo kick over. It was the stupidest thing, but he did it with Adam Cole as well. Like, they were able to do something that you just can't do normally. And to be honest, one of the biggest touts for MJF, especially as the face towards the end, is he gave you ostensibly the indie feel of being in an indie show at a big name wrestling promotion at the time without it feeling forced and stupid, right? I've seen it before and I've called it out. I think I called it out when we were watching. I can't remember who it was, but we were watching it in Dynasty where somebody did a thing and I'm like, he's doing something that would play to an indie crowd, but not to this crowd. Well, MJF was able to do a similar thing, but get it to play because of how big of a star he was. It is still. He's still with us.
Yeah.
You know, God willing.
Yes.
But
I hope
if he was to ever leave.
Yeah, oh, exactly. That's what I was thinking. There was a time where, like, he was rumored to be, like, going to WWE, you know, when, you know, his contract was up this year. And I was thinking to myself, if they end up losing him and he goes over there too, that's like...
Mm-hmm.
That's like the Radicals defecting from WCW moment. You know, that was... that could be a stake in the heart that they can't recover from.
Yeah, I agree. If they were to lose MJF of any variety, if he just decided to hang up the boots, right? That would be it. Like, that would be the end of AEW because there has not been a star to get to that level. Again, Swerve Strickland's working to that, and you got some others that are on that path, but MJF is there, right? He is the top star of AEW, even sitting at home right now.
You know, I know we've put him on the, you know, helped AEW thing here too. I think though his absence though could go on to the has hurt AEW.
I agree.
You know, because with him gone, it left such a huge gap that nobody else was able to fill that. Like you said, Swerve is starting to build up, but they did not have that ready to go at the time.
No.
So they've taken like almost a year to get to, you know, almost where they were kind of, you know, I don't know. I guess it would have, like, MJF left in December, so I guess not almost a year, like 4 months,
5 months.
But it feels like almost a year because of how long, like he left such a mark by leaving it or not by leaving, but by being off television and not knowing what's happening with him, that they didn't have the star power to withstand that kind of a blow. You know, it's almost like, you know, if somebody, like when Michael Jordan left the Bulls, you know, or retired, like, you know, switching to basketball there, but it left that kind of a gap, you know. So that's...
Or Tom Brady leaving the Pats.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you don't have that next in line ready to go. And Joe did a great job, like, carrying it, you know, for the little bit that MJF was got, you know, and carrying that title until somebody was ready to take it. But at the same time, as good as Joe is, as great as Joe is, he's not an MJF.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and do one last one.
All right. Well, if we're doing one last one, we have to end with the boss himself, Tony Khan. So this one's an interesting one because obviously there wouldn't be an AEW without Tony Khan. We'll just get that out of the way right now. You needed somebody that was a billionaire that had the money to back this whole enterprise, and you needed that. You know, it's funny because when AEW started, Tony Khan was announced as the owner and stuff, but it really still felt like it was Cody, the Bucks, Omega running the thing, and Tony Khan was supporting that. And then it started to be where Tony Khan was front and center. And he was the one, running everything. And everybody else kind of taking a back seat. The Bucks, Omega, all of that. Like, we now know, Tony's the guy. He's running it. But I don't necessarily feel that's a good thing. Like, obviously, they don't get on television. They don't get the TNT deal and, the TBS. They don't get the third show Collision without him, or probably without Punk. But that's, we're moving on past Punk. But, gosh, that's another thing I didn't mention with that. It's like, got him a whole new television show out of it. But, but Tony Khan, like, he brought the money. And I do feel like he's made the connections and that sort of thing. I think he's great at the networking with other sports, venues and everything. I feel like if Tony Khan wasn't there and it was just the Bucks and Cody and Omega running things, they never get on TNT. They never probably sell out Wembley because they don't have those types of connections to book a venue like that. I feel like it couldn't have happened without Tony, but I think Tony Khan is AEW's biggest hindrance. Because as much as we need Tony to be, to obviously fund the thing and give it its direction, he needs to be smart enough to delegate more and to say, all right, I'm going to run the thing, but I have the money. Why not put together the dream team of booking committees, to run? And you could even have the dream team of booking committees to run each show, whatever. There's enough guys out there that they could make something coherent and make the stories work and everything. I often feel like with his press conferences he does after the AEW pay-per-views, it doesn't make any sense. He should do it like how Triple H does it with the WWE press conferences. The guys come out and they talk, or Triple H starts it, or he ends it. He's not out there the whole time. Whereas Tony Khan, he's out there the whole time. Like, whether they're babyface or heel or whatnot, he's sitting right next to them. And it's really, he's the star of the show, or at least he's portraying that he's, it's not AEW, it's Tony Khan. And it often takes away from the hard work of everybody else, because it is, nobody's getting bigger than, bigger when you think of AEW than Tony Khan. So I feel like he really needs to take a step back and even if he's on a booking committee with other people and he brings people in and he's a part of it to kind of give final say on things, or to throw in his ideas, I think that would be fine if he needs to be. But he has the money. He needs to put together all these great wrestling minds. Like, look, he had Jake the Snake Roberts, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson. We've talked about this. He has Flair there. You have all these people, and you're not fully utilizing the knowledge that they have to put together, a great show, he has Jim Ross who used to book. I mean, there's all of these great minds there. And honestly, I would think that like somebody like a Jim Ross, I know he just probably wants to announce here and there, and call it a career, and he just wants to do what he loves, especially after his wife passed.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's better uses backstage for some of these guys with their their experience. And so Tony's on both sides for me. He's helped it, but it can't get to that next level without him putting the right people in place and taking a step back.
I agree. And to the whole, honestly, like without Tony, there wouldn't be an AEW. But at the same time, there's not going to be a future with Tony the way he currently is for AEW. Tony should honestly do his doppelgangers job like in WWE and be like the Nick Khan of AEW. Be the business end and deal with all of that because that's what he's good at. But stay away from the booking. Leave all the creative to somebody else. Be it a whole committee. Leave it to being just Brian, whomever. Right. Again, even QT. You could have those options and opportunities, and let him throw in his like 2 cents every once in a while. Things he'd want to see, like. If we had the occasional dream match of like Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay, I'm never going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that all the time, it diminishes it. And that's what Tony wants. So how could you say no to the guy signing the paychecks?
Right. And it's funny with I have 2 thoughts here to kind of close with it. The first one is that what they should do is, yes, to have these booking committees and do that, but he should give guys opportunities to be like guest booker for a show, and just see what they do because he needs fresh ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And if he just was like, all right, so for this one show, you got an hour of or an hour of Rampage per se. Put me, we're going to have you come on the show, put together the best show you can for that Rampage. And then if it's really sparks an interest, okay, we can use you more in the creative role, like that's how he should do it. Or reward guys, give guys opportunities to kind of book a show. And then if they do well, reward them. If they don't do well, if it's like, oh, that wasn't good, then never use them again. As far as a booking, it would at least be thinking outside the box, and you'd get fresh ideas instead of the same old, same old. The other thought I have there is that for everything that he despises about Vince McMahon, he kind of is his whole situation is very similar to Vince. Not in the scandal and that sort of thing. However, in the fact that
I don't think I could ever see that being with Tony.
No, his hand. Okay, I'm gonna get in trouble here, but send a hate mail. But like Tony Khan's scandal is, holding a girl's hand for the first time. But I'm just apparently he has a girlfriend or a wife. Or I don't know. Maybe I think a girlfriend, but so there's that. So it's just a joke. But Tony Khan, not the scandal part, but with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, obviously, there wouldn't be a WWE without Vince McMahon, right? However,
there won't be national wrestling without Vince McMahon.
There wouldn't be national wrestling in its form and all the the mainstream and all of that. But it came a time where Vince needed to take a step back and pass the torch, or to somebody else. And I think that's where Tony Khan is right now. He got it running. He's there, and I'm not saying he has to sell like a Vince or relinquish control, but he needs to focus on what he does best and bring in guys that can do what they do best.
Exactly.
And I think that's where they'll get to the next level. Whether or not he ever agrees to do that or not, I don't know. But I do feel like the future of AEW almost depends on that.
I agree. And I want to hear from you guys what your guys' thoughts are. Do you agree about any of the things we've talked about tonight about who's helped, hurt, or the companies of AEW? So reach out to us on social media. That'll be Be Hero Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also reach out to me directly on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Mike Burke Pro, or Mike Burke DCW and Mike Burke Pro on Twitter. You can also reach out to Psycho at Psycho Wrestling on the Facebooks. All right, guys. So as we air, we are only a couple days away. Or actually, I'm sorry. When this airs, this is Friday. So tomorrow is May the 4th for DCW, Devotion Championship Wrestling here in Salt Lake City. And we're going to have a fantastic show. Obviously, as by the name of the show, it's going to be a Star Wars themed show. I'm super excited. Last time we did May the 4th, which was a couple of years ago, it was fantastic. So I want to see you guys there as well. Get your tickets while they're still available. They're running very low. And then on May 11th, up in Ogden, Utah, we will be at Kamikaze's Bar once again for Tussle Time 12. And then on May 31st, we'll be at Bar Fights at Aces Saloons in Salt Lake City. And then June 8th, we'll be right back here in Salt Lake City for our next live taping. To get all the information and your tickets for that, please reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram at Devotion Championship Wrestling. At Twitter, it's DCW Salt Lake City, and on TikTok, it is Devotion Wrestling. Additionally, you can also reach out to me directly through the socials I gave you earlier and get tickets from me if you want to help support me specifically. So please reach out to us if you want to get tickets for any of those great shows. Psycho, is there anything else that we want to go over?
You know, they should do a follow-up show to the May the 4th, and it should be, you know, like a Spaceballs themed, and, you know, may the Schwartz be with you.
That is way too nerdy for Manny. There's no way that would happen.
Yeah, I know. I just had to say it.
Yeah.
No,
I thought we were going to go with Revenge of the Fifth.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There you go. There you go.
All right. With that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. I sure did. And for the rest of Be Hero Media, he's been Psycho. I've been me. And this is us tapping out. Have a good night, guys.